Hello everyone, and welcome back to Conspiracy. As we approach the holiday season, I thought that we would do something a little special to get into the holiday spirit. I have a whole script written out for Operation Paperclip, and I was actually going to make that this week, but I'm going to push that back, because instead of doing that this week, I'd like to do something a little bit more festive. So, instead of Operation Paperclip, we're going to be talking about a killer Santa Claus. Bruce McArthur was just an average, ordinary guy in Toronto. He owned a landscaping business, and he played Santa Claus during the off-season. His early life was fairly normal, but what is normal in Canada? He lived with both of his parents and his sister. His parents also fostered troubled children from Toronto, often with 6 to 10 total children in their care at any given time. The family also had a good reputation in the area. Bruce attended a one-room schoolhouse and always tried to be the teacher's pet by reporting mischief or plans for mischief, as he didn't fit in with the other boys. I wonder why. Sounds like you're a narc. It wasn't until Bruce's teenage years that his parents would split up, as his mother was an Irish Catholic and his father was a Scottish Presbyterian, both of who were devout practicing members. Bruce would often side with his mother, and as such his father left the family. Bruce met his future wife, Janice Campbell, in secondary school, where they graduated in 1970 and got married when Bruce was 23 years old. Now, Bruce had homosexual tendencies, and he tried to suppress those. It was small-town Canada in the 1970s. It's not exactly something that would have been accepted in the area at the time. After his and Janice's marriage, Bruce started working for Eaton's department store as the buyer's assistant. Just a few blocks away from the store, a gay village was forming. Homosexuality still wasn't widely accepted at the time, however, it had been decriminalized in 1969, just the year prior. He left his job at Eaton's after 5 years of work and began working as a traveling sock salesman for McGregor Socks. His job was to go to department stores and convince them to sell their socks there, so it wasn't like door-to-door, house-to-house selling. But his previous position at Eaton's helped him out because he was the buyer's assistant there, so he'd picked up a lot of tactics from the salesmen that he had talked to. Bruce's father was diagnosed with a brain tumor in the mid-1970s, and he was sent to an assisted living facility. His mother took interest in another man, and despite Bruce's rocky relationship with his father, was disappointed in his mom. He took this time to grow closer with his father, who eventually passed away in 1981. Surprisingly, based on the diagnosis actually, he did outlive his mother, who passed away in 1978. After his mother's passing, Bruce and his wife moved to a house in Oshawa, where they had 2 children, his daughter, Melanie, and a son, Todd. In 1986, Bruce became very active in his church, and he would keep himself as busy as possible so that he didn't really have time to really sit and think about his homosexual feelings. However, this would not work, as he began having affairs with men in the early 1990s. Very soon afterwards, he confessed his homosexual feelings to his wife, but they continued to live together. Financial turmoil would soon take the family, as he was laid off from his job, and they had legal issues involving their son, who was obsessively making obscene phone calls to women that he didn't know. The couple would later mortgage their house in 1997 and declare bankruptcy in 1999. Bruce separated from his wife and moved back to Toronto, as there was no real gay community in Oshawa. He would frequent gay bars and the gay village mentioned earlier. In this time, he was attempting to find work as a landscaper. Bruce's first run-in with the law came in 2001. October 31st, 2001 to be exact. It's a brisk Halloween night, and Bruce has been invited to actor and model Mark Henderson's apartment to see his Halloween costume. This is where tragedy strikes. Bruce came up from behind Mark and hit him several times with an iron pipe. Mark fought back before he finally lost consciousness. When he came to, he called 911 and was taken to the local hospital. Bruce actually turned himself in after the attack, but claimed he didn't remember the incident or why he might have done it. He pleaded guilty to charges of assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm. He received a sentence of 729 days, which is exactly 2 years minus 1 day. The Crown Attorney, who's like the public prosecutor in Canada, said that while he thought jail time was warranted, after a psychiatric evaluation, he also thought that Bruce was at a low risk to re-offend. Bruce actually avoided incarceration and spent the first year of his sentence under house arrest, followed by a 6-month curfew and 3 years of probation. During his sentence, he was barred from his favorite bar, and except for work and medical appointments, needed to stay at least 10 meters or 33 feet from the victim's house or workplace, and he could not spend any time with male prostitutes. At first I was a little surprised about that. Like, oh yeah, as part of your legal sentence you can't spend time with prostitutes. But then I found out that prostitution was only criminalized in 2014 and this was in 2001. Bruce also had to submit his DNA to a database and had to take psychological and psychiatric counseling, including anger management. In 2014, Bruce was granted a record suspension on the conviction and his records were expunged. This would not appear in criminal background checks at any point from then on. In 2002, while the assault case was still in the courts, he registered an account on Recon, which is a gay dating site, and noted that he was interested in submissive men. He was active on numerous dating sites, and his profiles were found on the following: Silver Daddies, Man Jam, Grindr, Bear 411, Bear Forest, Scruff, Daddy Hunt, Squirt, and Growler. In 2011, Bruce became a regular in the Toronto gay community and frequented the bars. He was living at Leaside Towers, a neighborhood that was populated mostly by immigrants, and was only 3 miles away from his favorite bar. He also opened a Facebook account where he would kind of catalog his nightlife, often with young men of South Asian or Middle Eastern descent. He developed a reputation for being rough in the bedroom, and people were advised to keep their distance. Bruce at this time was a self-employed landscaper who worked with an older man who seemed to be romantically involved with him. Bruce would also often have day laborers who worked for him, mostly of Southeast Asian or Middle Eastern descent, so it sounds like he was just picking up day laborers from his apartment complex. Most of the clients that Bruce served were actually wealthy elderly women. They found him charming, and he built a good client base just through personal recommendations. Since landscaping is just a seasonal job, he also worked as Santa Claus and made floral gifts for charity during his off-season. Bruce's son Todd had a really hard time accepting his father as gay. In 2014, Todd was sentenced to 14 months in jail for making multiple obscene phone calls again. He was released on bail and ordered to stay with his father in his Toronto apartment and assist with the landscaping. One of Todd's friends came over to visit and found that Bruce's bathroom actually had multiple pictures of naked men that Bruce himself had taken, and when questioned about it, Bruce just said, "Yeah, aren't they cute?" In November of 2012, a task force was launched that was investigating a missing Southeast Asian man who they believed was murdered. They had no leads as to what could have happened, but they did find a cannibal website in 2012 where a man posted about killing and eating a man in Toronto, which is actually what led to the creation of the task force. In June 2013, the task force identified 2 other missing persons cases linked by location and lifestyle. Both men were middle-aged immigrants of South Asian origin who disappeared from Bruce's favorite bar between 2010 and 2012. An anonymous tip linking Bruce to these 2 missing people led police to interview him. The police were told that Bruce had a romantic relationship with one of the men and frequented the other. Bruce told police that he knew both men and regularly interacted with them at the bar, but denied being in a relationship with either of them. He did say, however, that he employed one of them, and while not like a relationship, he did break off a sexual relationship with him. The task force concluded that without any evidence to link the disappearances or that a crime had been committed, they could not legally do anything to Bruce. On June 26, 2017, one day after attending Pride Toronto, Andrew Kinsman disappeared from Cabbagetown and was last seen near his residence. 2 days later, after no one had seen or heard from Andrew in a couple days, his friends gained access to his apartment. They couldn't find any signs of a disturbance. However, his cat was out of food and water. They reported his disappearance to the police the following day. Andrew was a responsible and stable man and would not just suddenly leave. He was a regular in the gay community. He especially wouldn't have left without his cat or prescription medications. At the end of 2017, a new task force was created to investigate the disappearance of Andrew Kinsman and another man, Salim Essen, and to look for links within the 2 cases that could link them to the previous cases that the task force had. Fears of a serial killer roaming the gay community grew on November 29th when the body of Tess Ritchie was found by her mother in an alleyway just 4 days after she was reported missing. The following day, the body of Alora Wells, a homeless transgender woman, had been identified. Her body had been found in August. With fears in the community growing, the police chief held a news conference on the 3 separate investigations into the deaths of Ritchie and Wells and the disappearances of Kinsman and Eason. Though they all occurred in close proximity, police didn't believe they were related, and police said there was no evidence of a serial killer. When they investigated Andrew Kinsman's disappearance, they did find a calendar with the name Bruce penciled in on the day that he went missing. Surveillance video outside of Andrew's residence showed a person matching his appearance approach a red vehicle. The video didn't show like a license plate or have a clear image of the driver, but Chrome's sighting on the vehicle identified the car as a 2004 Dodge Caravan. There were over 6,000 Dodge models in Toronto, but only 5 were registered to someone named Bruce, and of those, the only 2004 red Dodge Caravan belonged to a Mr. Bruce McArthur. By late 2017, they matched the van to a surveillance video from Bruce's apartment, but it was no longer there. On October 3rd, 2 plainclothes officers arrived at Dom's Auto Parts, 43 miles northeast of Toronto. They were looking for the 2004 Dodge Caravan, which the owner of the shop had confirmed that he purchased on September 16th. The police found it and had it towed away and received a copy of surveillance video of Bruce visiting the shop. Officers later found trace amounts of blood in the vehicle, which was identified as Andrew Kinsman's blood. On January 17th, 2018, 2 pieces of evidence were found that directly linked Bruce to the disappearance of Eason and Kinsman. They got a warrant for Bruce's computer and found deleted files of post-mortem photos of the victims. Round-the-clock surveillance was put on Bruce with instructions that he should be immediately arrested if seen, quote, alone with anyone. The police officers trailing Bruce moved in to arrest him shortly after they saw a young man entering his apartment on July 18, 2018, believing that the man's life was at risk. This was just the day after they approved the warrant to trail him. When they entered the apartment, they found the young man tied to a bed. He was scared but not injured. According to court testimony, the man had met Bruce on a dating app, and they had met for hookups several times before. He let Bruce handcuff him to the bed, but, against his will, Bruce put a black bag over his head and tried to tape his mouth shut before police officers entered. Evidence found within Bruce's apartment prompted investigators to charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Police got search warrants for 5 properties associated with Bruce's landscaping business. They found the dismembered skeletal remains of at least 3 people in large planter boxes on one of his residences. They later found the skeletal remains of 3 other people in 3 separate planter boxes on a different residence. Bruce later pleaded guilty to all 8 first-degree murder charges that he ended up facing. Bruce was sentenced to life in prison without eligibility of parole for 25 years. The judge described the crimes as pure evil and stated that Bruce showed no evidence of remorse and would have continued killing had he not been arrested. Bruce can apply for parole when he's 91, but experts say it is highly unlikely that he will be granted parole, and with his body shape of overweight and his type 2 diabetes, it's unlikely that he will even live to see 91. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed, and hope you learned a little something. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Again, thank you so much for watching. It really means the world to me. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.